wanted to know, how old are you, Faisal?
Me, I am 40. I'm going to be 41 this
Right.
year. Yourself?
I'm at the age where I can't remember anymore. I just turned 52.
Wow, okay, you're looking very well. 52,
Oh, thank you.
You're looking very, I want to put you at least like early 40s.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
But, so we've just both of us passed our 9 years, and I always think that's that like you were 39 and now you're just 40.
Yeah.
And that.
I don't think I handled 40 very well, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah, I thought I would have handled it better, and then it came. I was like, man, I'm 40 now. I was walking up the stairs with my mum the other day, and I was like, Mum, you're really getting old now. And she was like, well, I've got a middle-aged son. I was like, great, touche, mother, touche. But there is a point of it. You start to think about life slightly differently. And I don't know, how do you feel at 50, is it 52 you said?
52,
How do you feel at 52 now?
I do think there's a kind of spirituality for two different halves of life. And I certainly remember when I was, probably about 45, kind of feeling like I was moving between a spirituality for the first half of life and then moving into a spirituality for the second half of life. And I felt a bit unsure, and I read some writing by this guy called Richard Rohr, which is spelled R-O-H-R. He talks about in the first half of life you're kind of building yourself up, and it's like you're kind of building like a sculpture, and then in the second half of life it's all about taking it down again.
Deconstructing it.
Deconstruct, yeah.
So at this age now, you definitely feel as though there's definitely been two parts of your life. There was that younger bit, which was the learning, and not that you stop learning, you continue learning always, but then it's what do you do with that learning, and then you feel you feel emboldened with that learning you've done in the past to take it forward and build something with that. This is how I feel at the moment as well. I feel like, well, you spent all this time learning and putting yourself out there, etc., and now you're in a place where you can really build something for yourself, how you want to build it with this knowledge that you've acquired and still acquire. So it's very interesting. Yeah, it's definitely a different, interesting time to be alive at the moment, especially again when you're coming back and talking about being, because it's the thing of being, and then you say, okay, we say, is it important to talk about being? But then, is it important to talk about being or be in the being?
Yes.
All right, but then I had a wise man come and told me, and this is somebody else who said this to me, and I really took it on board. And it's kind of the philosophy in life at the moment. And it's, whatever I say to you, I say to myself first, because my ears are a lot closer to my mouth than yours are. And I feel like that's intrinsically in the whole concept of, we talk about talking about being. Because, because you're a writer as well, right? So when ideas are in your head, they're only ever in your head. But as soon as they're on a piece of paper, you're like, okay, I can contextualize this now. I can see it, I can touch it, I can taste it almost. And then I can take it from there and I can make it into something else. So it's interesting, having to talk about these things, especially on camera. Yeah. Because I'm definitely having a period of growth in my life at the moment over the last few months. I'm literally finishing with loads of old projects. And literally within the last week or so, I've had to take a step back and reassess what am I doing, how am I doing it, why am I doing it, and the important questions about being, about what is it that you're trying to achieve with this work of yours that you do, because essentially it's about you, but it's about relaying a message, isn't it, to the people.
You want to take something, I suppose, don't you, that is particular to you and make it universal enough that everyone can understand, that it resonates and it goes out into the world. Yeah. It has its own life as an idea, yeah. I've been thinking about this book that I want to write, and it's called Some Sky of One's Own. And it's this idea, like it's moving on, it's playing on, a room of one's own, and how you need to have shelter and economic certainty and so on in order to create. But it's actually about that mental space and having enough certainty or freedom from fear and shame and so on, to enable you to basically imagine, to have the mental space to be able to reimagine the world. So I've been thinking about how do I introduce myself to people who don't know my story, and I think I would say at the moment that I would define myself as being a woman in midlife, and therefore that connects me to a sort of sisterhood of women in midlife, and you know what you've been through in terms of like, you know, like your scars and your wounds, but I think in some ways the defining thing of my life was having a mental health breakdown when I was a student, and I was at Oxford University, and then I left Oxford University because I was in an asylum, and I kind of spent 3 years going forward and backward, and then finally graduated. But I did my finals half in the Oxford exam halls and half in the Warneford Hospital, Oxford, which was a really weird experience.
Yeah.
So I think I sort of, I felt a bit of a failure, and I spent quite a bit of time kind of trying to recycle and reuse my experience, and I've always tried to make it useful. I promised myself I would make it useful. So every single time something happens to me, or I get a knock, or I get an experience, I'm always thinking, how can I weave that in somehow? How can I make that into something that turns into something that is actually beautiful or useful? And how fascinating it is to have this conversation with a guy who is Muslim. You're Muslim, are you? Yeah. So it's just like, how brilliant! Brilliant! I don't have these conversations.
Most men don't have these conversations themselves. You know, I've been with groups of. It's very interesting to see the way dynamics work and the way people will deal with their emotions and their feelings, etc. And the men, you genuinely, without sounding too sort of in a bubble, but everybody does keep it to themselves. And 9 times out of 10, yes, actually, I have been through something similar, but I just didn't think that anybody else would want to talk about this stuff. But me, I'm a talker, so I'm like, well, okay, if you got something to say, let's talk about it. Here's my trauma, I'll give it to you, you know, unabashed. There you go, and then deal with it what you want. And then that gives people the freedom to sort of share with you then as well. And then it's just that sharing of ideas that we're always doing, isn't it?
And I think there's a real generosity in giving your story, you know, like, you know, and there's a generosity in receiving help as well. If you need help, there's a generosity in that. I like to come into conversations and say I need help, because I like seeing how other people respond to that. And sometimes actually the gift that I give is saying, well, actually I can't do it on my own, you know, and I try and show my workings. I try and show my failings, and, you know, when things are not going well.
It's so important to be honest with yourself, isn't it? It's being honest with other people is one thing, but being honest with yourself, it's the most difficult thing. And people take it so far and wide as well. People are fascinating, especially when you get into the nitty gritty of everybody. That's why I feel like I'm so fascinated. We feel like we're so disconnected, that we're all these separate beings having these separate journeys, but essentially we're having the same journey, but we're just having different experiences. But it's, you know, it's life, living, and then death ultimately, isn't it? But it's in that living, so what we're doing and how we're doing it. There's this poster that I made a while back, and it was knowledge is not power. Everybody used to come in really confused. Like, what do you mean knowledge is not power? I'm like, knowledge is not power. Everybody has knowledge, or a certain amount of knowledge, but it's what you do with that knowledge. Physically, how do I implement this knowledge that I have into the world and make benefit to the wider sort of world? Because it starts off, intrinsically it starts with you, then it starts with your family, say for example, then your friends, then your community, and then the world. I'm trying to impact change in the world, but I know that I'm not going to impact change in the world unless I first do it myself internally, then with my family, then with my community, and then the wider world. I'm not going to get there before I sort the changes out here.
Yeah, we're all little individuals, and we only kind of make a difference when we're in community, and that brings in community, that brings in politics, that brings in the personal and the relationship to the group, that brings in potentially like isolation and segregation. And
people are so taboo against religion nowadays. You mention religion to anybody and it's like the ears just turn off. They don't want to know. It's also why in the vernacular that I use, I don't ever use the word, I try not to use the word God and religion, because as soon as you say the word God to somebody, they're like, oh my God, what's he talking about? You know, because you're obviously quite involved in the church, etc. as well. So me, being Muslim, and I try to pray my 5 times, etc. Me, I always use the word universe with everybody now. I'm like, the universe wants me to do this. The universe, you're like, wow, the universe. It's, but you have to change the language as you change in the generations that you're talking to.
I just came back from a women's weekend, which is actually with my old church, and I kind of resonated again with all the people who know my story, and we're all aware of all the kind of scars, whether they're mental scars or physical scars, or or just life knocks that we've had, and how people reinvent themselves and endlessly recreate.
Yeah.
So and women are really good at that. I'm fascinated with looking at other women now and how they've navigated their lives and recreate.
Yeah.
When I was in between churches doing that journey, and I wasn't sure where I was going to get sustenance from, and actually it came from people in the street, it came from like a random conversation, it came from like someone handing out flyers, it came from all sorts of places. But then what's so interesting about this is we are from different cultural reference points, and it's so nice to make that connection. Yeah.
We're all just having a human connection, really, aren't we?
Yeah,
It is literally that human connection. When you take out all the politics, you take out all the religion, you take out everything else, we all literally have the same. We all have the same concerns. We all have the same. We're all worried about food, shelter, families, all of these. Everybody has that same essential
life purpose, meaning.
You take out everything else from the equation, and this is for me, especially when I'm talking to people, unless you give me a reason to have a certain frame of thought, where it may be, I'm not getting into it. I'm taking everything out of the equation. I'm talking to you as a human being. So it's okay. Who is this human, and where they come from, and where are they going, and how can we enlighten one another's lives in this short space of time that we have? That's what this isn't that the saying, or is it something similar? It's literally that. You meet people in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It might be a second or two, but how can I leave this person with a better feeling of self in the time that we're spending together, right? And that's only going to help me, because you have your own insecurities and your own anxieties, etc. And you're working through it, and it's a constant progress. It never ends, that progress, that process, does it? It's constant. That okay, how am I growing today? How am I going to grow today?
When I had my mental health breakdowns, then I just became really aware that there is a spirituality that runs underneath life, and it's almost like these things are metaphors that tap into it, but everything that we do has a spiritual resonance.
I always take it back to spirituality and everything. But because people forget, we're spiritual beings, aren't we? We're just in this physical body of ours, but essentially, there's this spirit inside of us, and it yearns for things, and it tells us, do it this way, do it that way. It's whether or not we want to be receptive to it or not, right? It's trusting that inner voice enough. Like, do I trust myself? Do I trust that inner voice enough? But then everybody else puts the doubts inside, and you have to take those voices out from there and say, hey, hold on a second. This is how I'm feeling. This is how I want to pursue this, etc.
I mean, I'm in a period of reinvention at the moment, and it's frightening, but it's so good to be at that foundational point and to know that you're building on something firm. That's amazing, and fear is a massive driver, shame is a massive driver, and like this thing about like conversations about being, those little moments where you are completely yourself, you are not able to make those unless you have that foundation. And that's about not being driven by fear and not being driven by shame, sure, there's economic necessity, but it doesn't have to be a threat.
No.
You know, it's just.
It can be quite a liberating feeling as well, isn't it? To be like, wow, okay, I have these things, and let me attack my fears. Are you the same as well? If you have fears, you like, right, I'm not going to be dictated to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really strong about fear. I will not let it rob me.
Yeah,
you know.
it's I think I've done it for so many years. I've done it for so long in my life, whether it be through internal reasons or external reasons. You know, you cloud your judgment with intoxicants, whatever it may be, and then you come out of it and you're like, well, why did I do that to myself? Why did I'm great at sabotaging myself. I'm amazing at sabotaging myself, and I'm trying not to get in my own way at the moment. I'm like, well, why are you doing that to yourself?
Yeah,
like, literally,
getting my own way the whole time.
Well, I know where that road leads, and why am I going on that road again? It does not make any sense.
But the thing that makes that road, the road of fear and shame, it makes it intoxicating, or drives you down it, is actually because it's a threat to your sense of self.
When you come down to the crux of it, that's what it is, isn't it? You want to leave behind a legacy, something of worth for humanity, etc. Yeah, definitely.
But it doesn't have to be big and overwhelming, and
No.
Think of the thousands of lives that we'll touch in our lifetime.
It's the little wins, I think. It's definitely the little. I'm definitely at the moment. I'm definitely trying to celebrate the little wins. So every day, or accomplish a little bit in yourself. You're like, okay, I accomplished that little bit today. I accomplished that little bit today, or a little bit tomorrow, and it's coming back to that thing of can't leave it just in the philosophy. You have to make it action.
Why is it important to you to talk about spirituality, or I mean, we're kind of interpreting being as spirituality, but yeah.
Why do I think it's important to talk about it? We talk about everything else enough, don't we? Right? We talk about everything else. We talk about the politics. People are so engrossed in the material, and I've never been one for the material. I've always been religiously inclined. That's always been a source of happiness and joy for me. And I feel as though this might be an assumption, but just talking to people nowadays, they don't want to talk about this stuff. And I feel as though it's probably about the most important thing you can talk about. The universe isn't going to come down and tell you it directly to your face. Yeah. It's going to give you a prod here and there, and if you're aware enough, you start to see where the connections are, and you say, okay, I understand what you're trying to tell me, universe. I get it. So, and then once you're there, you kind of carry on, isn't it? This is why
it's like when you get annoyed by other people, often the thing that annoys you in other people is something that annoys you in yourself.
You're like, so why am I going to get annoyed now? I'm just getting annoyed with myself, really, isn't it? So I need to change myself. It's always nice to, learn a different way of being and learning, how to be, what to be, where to be. You know what I mean?
And really approaching things with curiosity as well. That's what I've learned in this conversation. I've been thinking about what I want to say, but I've also been listening, and it's been really interesting seeing where it ends up going, because I just wanted to find out about you, and I wanted to respond.
I definitely feel like I've found out more about you as well, which is always good.